Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, in the news this week, we have Russia unveiling their newest nuclear-powered missile and President Putin's strong words to go along with it. Right. Also, a story on Azerbaijan in now wanting to make moves to sell energy to the country of Europe. Also, key players in the United States government, some of them getting in trouble. We'll have those stories. But first, how about bring your AR-15 to church? Well, it's only been 2 weeks since the deadly school shooting in Florida, but members of the Sanctuary Church near Newfoundland, Pennsylvania, were encouraged to bring their AR-15s to a couple's blessing ceremony. They believe that the weapon symbolizes the rod of iron found in the book of Revelation. Wow.
Well, one participant, Louis Perlman, made the comment that he didn't see the AR-15 as an assault rifle, but a weapon he would use to protect his family and neighbors. During the service, the firearms were displayed throughout the church. Participants were instructed to point the rifles upward and keep their fingers off the triggers. While this practice is not new or unusual for the church, they understand that it is controversial.
Well, in Syria, guns are not just on display, but being used in full force. Now, the United States has asked Turkey to suspend its offensive in Syria's Afrin district. New video has been released on social media suggesting there are now Turkish-backed Syrian rebels fighting the YPG militia in the area.
The Turkish government says they are fighting terrorists in northwest Syria, and therefore the latest UN resolution does not apply to them. The resolution demands a ceasefire across the Syrian country for 30 days.
Well, Turkey's prime minister expressed his viewpoint, saying there are some people confusing the olive branch operation that we've been conducting in Afrin with East Ghouta. It's obvious that the UN Security Council's resolution refers to East Ghouta, but the U.S. State Department is insisting that Ankara go back and read the resolution over because they say it means all of Syria.
Interesting. Now, the Red Cross has said it will send an aid convoy to Afrin to give some relief to nearly 50,000 displaced people there. It seems this is the first time so far this year that charities have secured an agreement from all parties involved to make such a humanitarian delivery. And of course, however, Jeff, this doesn't seem at this point, at least from what we're seeing, that Turkey is actually going to cooperate with the ceasefire.
Well, for the first time ever, a pipeline project will bring natural gas from Azerbaijan to Europeans. While the country has long been a powerhouse when it comes to energy resources, they have lacked the ability to sell to the European market. But with the construction of a series of mega projects called the Southern Gas Corridor, this will be possible.
Azerbaijan has a state-owned energy company called SOCAR, which is one of the largest foreign investors in Turkey. Senior corporate executives of SOCAR have told reporters the necessity for Turkey and Azerbaijan to work closely together is critical when it comes to Europeans having a secure source of energy. Therefore, the two countries are working together to construct the European Southern Gas Corridor, which is scheduled to be fully operational by the year 2020, which is only 2 years away.
Not very far.
Yeah.
Well, the entire project is said to cost $45 billion and would deliver 16 billion cubic meters of gas from Azerbaijan to Europe annually. The gas is extracted from Azerbaijan's Shah Deniz gas fields, which was their investment, costing $28 billion. Now, in addition to these offshore platforms in the Caspian Sea, the country's most prized possession is the Shangshal terminal.
The terminal is the central hub for distributing Azerbaijan's natural resource. Not only will Shah Deniz and Shangshal deliver gas to all of Europe, but every country along the southern corridor as well. According to the local authorities, this will more than double their current gas production.
Well, Turkey is a very important partner to Azerbaijan, 1,850 kilometers, which is more than half of the corridor's overall length, runs straight through Turkey. Now, it is known as the Trans-Anatolia Pipeline. Now, currently, Turkey is the #1 importer of Azerbaijani natural gas. In light of the deal, Turkey can also expect to receive an additional 2 billion cubic meters of gas, and that is a 30% increase.
Well, I'm sure they're pretty joyous about that increase for their supplies. For a European capital, this new corridor will be crucial to keeping the lights on, people staying warm, and of course, industries functioning. Until now, Russia's Gazprom has controlled more than a third of Europe's gas market. So by Azerbaijan coming on the scene, it's going to be a big change. And the thinking of many abroad is this alternative source of natural gas will give Europe energy security.
Europe is facing a cold snap this winter, which means the demand for natural gas is expected to soar. But Azerbaijan and Turkey are positioning themselves to offer much-needed relief and security to the energy-hungry continent.
However, the world's largest oil and gas reserves belongs to Iraq. Much of those reserves have not yet been exploited due to many years of war. One of the examples of this is in Kirkuk, where there is thought to be 9 billion barrels of recoverable oil underground. In October of last year, government forces pushed Kurdish fighters out of Kirkuk, and now Iraqi leaders are planning to get production going there again.
The Iraqi oil minister announced that they've reached an agreement with the British oil and gas giant BP. They have already performed seismic survey operations and studies to raise the output capacity up to as much as 750,000 barrels per day. Now, when the deal was signed, BP's representative said if the field is looked after, it will bring prosperity to the whole country for generations to come.
Wow. However, that is the biggest problem for Iraq, keeping control of the oil fields. While federal ministers are saying there is no longer a threat from ISIL in the region, the group has been blamed for killing 2 policemen who were guarding oil fields last weekend. Because of abundance of natural wealth under the ground, there is no certainty that the threat from others will ever be gone.
According to surveys, Iraq's proven oil reserves may be more than 140 billion barrels. Currently, the entire country is producing 4.3 million barrels per day. Now, this oil production is 90% of revenues for Iraq's economy. And with the focus on oil, Iraq's natural gas resources have been overlooked, but there is definitely no lack of it. Estimates say that they have more than 3 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, with only a fraction being exported. Now, of course, the government is looking to increase revenues here as well.
Amazing. Well, the UK is holding a conference in Berlin specifically for the issue of Iraq's petroleum. Their goal is to address the issues the country faces and how they can continue to play an important role as a world supplier of oil and gas. And it's interesting that there's so much fighting that takes place over this oil and gas, but then all the research shows there's so much of it. There's plenty of it for all mankind, all the countries to benefit and prosper for many lifetimes to come.
Exactly. Well, moving over to Iran now, they have banned importers from using the U.S. dollar as a base price currency. Iran insists pricing in import documents must be based on non-dollar currency, such as the euro or other national currencies of major exporting countries.
Well, Iran's goal is to get rid of the greenback. Its reason is simple, since they have no access to the U.S. dollar. And of course, they haven't had that because of the years of sanctions that's been placed on the country of Iran, and as a result, they have no use for the United States dollar. So in 2015, when the landmark nuclear agreement was made between Iran and the P5+1, Iran was promised to gain access once again to the dollar.
Well, this was a promise by U.S. officials that upon signing the agreement, Iran would be back in business with the U.S. However, they are still being denied by American banks. So America's failure to deliver on this promise has caused the shift in the opposite direction. Iran plans to join Russia and China, who are also pushing ahead ambitious plans to gain independence from the U.S. currency. We brought some of those stories, how they're trying to separate and not have to deal with the dollar at all.
Getting rid of that petrodollar
Right.
and not just oil, but other exports and imports as well. Now, currently, Iran is already receiving oil payments in currencies other than dollar. Many think this is the right direction for Iran to head in, and some say that they should have done it long ago.
Well, we now turn over to Larry McGee, who has been tracking matters for us in Washington. Larry, we hear there's disunity in the nation's top administration. Is this right?
That's right, guys. There is apparently discord in the White House so intense that the fights are starting to spill over into the public. President Trump has been expressing his disapproval for the leadership of Attorney General Jeff Sessions for quite some time now, and doing so over social media, which some consider to be crude, but is nonetheless the president's style. The controversial commander has been firing off tweets like, "Why is AG Jeff Sessions asking Inspector General to investigate potentially massive FISA abuse? Will take forever, has no prosecutorial power, and already late on reports on Comey, etc. Isn't the IG an Obama guy? Why not use Justice Department lawyers? Disgraceful." End quote. Once more, unorthodox president issuing correction and expressing disapproval via social media? Not surprising. Attorney General Jeff Sessions responding to said correction publicly and with noticeable frustration? That represented a difference. The Attorney General released a statement saying, "We have initiated the appropriate process that will ensure complaints against this department will be fully and fairly acted upon if necessary." And he went on to say, "As long as I am the Attorney General, I will continue to discharge my duties with integrity and honor, and this department will continue to do its work in a fair and impartial manner according to the law and the Constitution." Attorney General Sessions had been receiving a steady browbeating over the course of the last few months, but had endured it with the maturity and silent respect for authority that one would typically expect from someone holding his office. The straw that broke the camel's back, however, and triggered the Attorney General Sessions to talk back was President Trump going after the Attorney General's staff. Other members of the president's staff are receiving negative press for other reasons. President Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is currently beset with questions concerning conflicts of interest. Advisor Kushner has been assigned multiple high-level responsibilities in the administration, including hashing out a peace agreement in the Euphrates, handling America's relationship with Mexico, U.S. relations with China, and other domestic responsibilities as well. The controversy with regard to the advisors stemmed from reported efforts by nations such as the UAE, Mexico, and China to use Mr. Kushner's business status, debts, investment needs, and so forth, to manipulate him on issues of policy. Those efforts were caught by the CIA, and hence the story. Along with the suspicions of possible misconduct on the governmental level, however, there are also reports of two major firms, Apollo and Citigroup, meeting with the young advisor at the White House and then afterwards lending hundreds of millions of dollars to his family business. Quite expectedly now, there are questions surfacing as to the nature of those meetings. And in speaking on the situation, attorney Patrick Cotter says the advisor Kushner may have exposed himself to an allegation that he violated the bribery of a public official statute. That statute prohibits either the offering or acceptance of anything of value to a public official in exchange for an official act. Mr. Cotter says that if an attorney is able to link the benefits that Apollo and Citigroup were seeking with the $500 million in loans, give or take, that Mr. Kushner received from those two companies, then senior White House advisor Jared Kushner could be facing prosecution. Amid all of this, there are also reports that the president himself is struggling emotionally. Sources close to the president say that he has become withdrawn and something is very wrong. He's being described as spiraling out of control and unwilling to accept accountability for any wrongs. This is reportedly causing concern on the economic front as well as in other areas. Political analyst Gloria Berger wrote, "Not since Richard Nixon started talking to the portraits on the walls of the West Wing has a president seemed so alone and against the world." Other analysts, such as David Gregory, say that there is no one that the president will listen to. And when process breaks down like this, and there is a real crisis involving life and death, a president in this condition should make people worry. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
I guess we'll see how President Trump holds it together under this pressure that he's going through right now. Well, Russia is making its voice heard concerning its nuclear power. At his State of the Nation address, President Putin displayed giant screens with missiles raining down on Florida. Those missiles Putin is calling an invincible intercontinental cruise missile. A nuclear-powered cruise missile which Putin claimed could travel around any obstacle or even missile defense systems and is considered to be unstoppable. Mr. Putin said, "No one has listened to us. Well, you'll listen to us now." Yeah.
Well, the missile isn't yet in production, but the U.S. former vice chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff General James Cartwright said that it's very concerning because they've attained a high assurance that their attacks would be successful by going to higher speeds and coming from different directions. Now, U.S. President Trump hasn't cooled the tensions any with his statement of wanting the U.S. nuclear arsenal to be the biggest and best in the world. So there you go. You're going to push. It's going to push for that arms race kind of once again.
Tit for tat, and then eventually there's going to be some type of preemptive strike. Well, the head of the U.S. National Security Agency criticized the U.S. for not doing enough to punish Russia for election meddling, saying they haven't paid a price that's sufficient, at least, for them to change their behavior.
Well, at the White House press meeting with the White House spokesperson addressed Putin's announcement regarding its nuclear weaponry. The spokeswoman said that Putin has acknowledged what the U.S. knew all along about Russia's nuclear program. She said that Russia has been developing weapons for decades in violation of its treaty agreement. She also said that the president is willing to protect our homeland and preserve peace through strength.
We know part of that strength is the nuclear strength. She concluded by saying that America is moving forward to modernize our nuclear arsenal and ensure our capabilities are unmatched.
Well, Turkey is being threatened with sanctions by the U.S. if it continues with the purchase of S-400 missiles from Russia. Now, the U.S. says that it wants to help Turkey find a better alternative to meet its air defense needs without violating NATO agreements. Yunus Sunar with the Turkish Vatican Party said that Turkey will find its own security in cooperation with its neighbors, and it will do so by all means necessary, and Turkey will purchase other things beyond the S-400. Now, Turkey has found out in this who are its friends and, of course, who are its enemies.
Right. Well, you've got Russia that is a part of that the area that Turkey is in, being a neighborly friend. He says Turkey is predominantly an Asian country, but then you also have the United States, who is part of NATO. That, you know, they should be able to work together, but you have threats coming from the United States, and of course Turkey is receiving some resources from Russia. So, you know, I guess we'll see how this all plays out. A very popular tourist site in Jerusalem has shut its doors. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Christians believe Christ rose from the grave, had its doors closed by the Greek Orthodox, Armenian, and Catholic churches, which jointly run the church. They are the ones that announced its closure in protest to measures that they say will strain their rights over church property. Theophilus said, "This reminds us of the blows that the Jews suffered during the dark period in Europe. This is an unprecedented attack against Christians in the Holy Land and severely violates the most basic and sovereign rights," he said.
Well, the church says that it's being hit with a twofold attack as the city government of Jerusalem has made a demand of over $180 million in back taxes and legislation that would seize retroactively church land for the state sold to private companies. Now, the Christian Church owns prime real estate throughout Jerusalem, with a lot of that land being leased to the state. Palestinians have criticized the Greek patriarch for selling property inside the old city selling the property in the old city to Jewish settler groups and others.
Interesting. The city has already frozen about $9 million in assets of the Greek Orthodox Church, properties that are supposed to be tax exempt for use of the church, but are actually being commercially used, such as in the hotels, which the church owns, and of course those rental properties, some of which they are actually leasing back to the city of Jerusalem. Well, church leaders are calling this an attempt to weaken the Christian presence in Jerusalem.
Well, lastly, the Vatican has reminded Christians that Jesus is the only Savior in light over current tendencies that reduce and distort the meaning of Christian salvation. In a new letter, Placi Deo, in that letter it says that salvation does not exist in the self-realization of an isolated individual, nor of an interior fusion of the individual with the divine. Rather, salvation consists in being incorporated into a communion of persons that participates in the communion of the Trinity.
Sounds really confusing.
Yes.
Well, the Vatican also says that neither good works nor good feelings drive salvation. While the Vatican is telling its followers that great works won't drive salvation, the works of mankind are driving all of creation one step closer to death and total destruction every day. While the nation's leaders and the Roman Catholic Church wonder about peace, well, Yisrael Hawkins and the House of Yahweh have been teaching it for over 40 years now. Along with those teachings are the works that produce peace and bring feelings of peace, joy, and love. And if our nation's leaders would actually start to look towards real solutions that will prevent wars and stop the existing wars, then we can start moving in a new direction where we don't have these threats of nations building up their nuclear arsenal so that they can be heard.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories and others, please contact the House of Yahweh. You can contact them by writing the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. If you'd like to email the House of Yahweh, you can email them at info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, please call the number that's on your screen. And once again, we'd like to remind you of two absolutely free Bible study tools on the market, the Yisrael Says program and the Ask Yisrael program. You can learn more about these excellent programs by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, a man that is actually showing the way to true salvation, Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.